Let me ask you something real. When was the last time you looked in the mirror and asked yourself, why do I keep letting them treat me like this? Not out of weakness, but out of fear, out of habit, out of silence. See, people don't just decide who you are. You show them, you teach them, you train them by what you tolerate. And the truth, the raw, honest, gut-punching truth, people will only rise to the standard you set, or they'll sink to the one you allow. You weren't born to be stepped on. You weren't put on this earth to be a placeholder in someone else's story. You're the main character in your life. But if you keep saying yes when your soul is screaming no, if you keep letting people borrow your heart without paying it back in respect, you're not just losing relationships, you're losing yourself. It's time to change that. Right now, it's time to draw the line, not in anger, but in power, in self-respect, in knowing who you are and what you deserve. Because the moment you stop accepting less is the moment they start giving more. You've got to understand something. People are watching you, even when you think they're not. They're reading how you react when they push your limits. They're testing the waters, seeing how far they can go, how loud they can speak, how much of you they can take without permission. And if you keep letting them inch across your soul, if you keep staying quiet while your spirit screams, they're not going to stop. Because people don't stop at the edge of your pain. They stop at the edge of your boundary. That's why your power is in the line you draw, not the pain you carry. But let me tell you this. It's not about building a wall out of anger. It's about building a door with a lock. Boundaries aren't about shutting the world out. They're about deciding who has the key. So don't confuse being nice with being open for abuse. You're not obligated to be available for disrespect. You're not required to let people treat you like an afterthought just because you once loved them. There comes a time when your peace has to matter more than pleasing everybody who has no intention of respecting your soul. Now, don't get it twisted. Setting boundaries doesn't mean being bitter. It doesn't mean walking around with your fist clenched and your heart guarded by barbed wire. It means knowing what you will and won't accept and communicating that with strength and calm. Bitterness is loud, reactive, always looking to hurt back. But boundaries are calm, boundaries are quiet. Boundaries are the confidence to say, this is where I end and you do not get to step further. Because see, bitterness comes from wounds that never heal, but boundaries they come from wisdom. You learn them through experience, through heartbreak, through silence that echoed too long and apologies that never came. And when you finally get tired of shrinking yourself to keep the peace, you start to realize the peace you were trying to keep wasn't real to begin with. That's the shift. That's when you stop trying to control how people feel about your no and start standing behind it with boldness. You don't need to justify your boundary. You don't owe anybody a reason for protecting your peace. If they truly care about you, they'll respect it. If they don't, let them go. The door swings both ways. The hardest part about setting boundaries is the guilt, especially if you're someone with a soft heart. Someone who's always given more than they received. Saying no feels like you're turning your back on love. But the truth is, you're not rejecting love. You're rejecting behavior that disguises itself as love but steals your joy. And if it costs you your self-respect, it's too expensive. Period. You've got to ask yourself, what have you been accepting in the name of not losing someone? Because if keeping them requires losing yourself, it's not a relationship, it's a sacrifice. And that ain't love. That's emotional debt. You deserve better than that. You deserve relationships that honor your humanity. People who don't just tolerate your boundaries, but celebrate them. Because when someone really sees you, they'll want to protect the parts of you that have been hurt before. And anyone who gets angry because you spoke up, anyone who vanishes because you set a standard, that's proof they were only there for the version of you that kept quiet, not the real you. So be real now, because the fake peace of silence never lasts. Speak up for you. You see, people will say, you've changed. They'll say you're cold now, that you're distant. But what they really mean is you're not as easy to manipulate anymore. You're not bending backwards for folks who wouldn't even lean forward for you. And when you start setting those lines, when you stop picking up every call, replying to every text, showing up every time they snap their fingers, they feel the shift and it threatens them. because you've taken your power back. You've taken your time, your space, your energy, and placed it under lock and key. Not to isolate yourself, but to protect yourself. You're not bitter. You're just done bleeding for people who won't even hand you a bandage. You're not rude. You're just tired of being the only one giving. And you finally realized if someone truly wants a place in your life, they'll prove it with consistency, not with empty promises and late night apologies. So when they tell you you've changed, say thank you. Say it with pride. Because the version of you that let them walk all over your boundaries, that version needed to evolve. And this new you, this is growth. This is healing. This is self-love in action. When you learn the power of a boundary, your life starts to clean itself up. People begin to fall off, not because you chase them out, but because the environment you're creating no longer feeds their chaos. Some folks only love you when you're tired, when you're weak, when you say yes out of fear and okay just to keep things smooth. But you've got to understand, the ones who stay when you start saying no, those are your people. Those are the ones who value you, not just your availability. And that's the point of boundaries. They're not punishment. They're protection. You're not trying to make people feel bad. You're just building a life that doesn't allow confusion, disrespect, or manipulation to live rent-free. You're not bitter. You're better. Better at protecting your time. Better at walking away. Better at staying firm when people test your limits. And once you start living in that space, the peace you feel is unshakable. You sleep better. You breathe deeper. Because you're finally giving yourself the same grace you used to hand out to everybody else. And that right there, that's growth nobody can take from you. Now here's where the power really kicks in. When you stop apologizing for putting yourself first. Because the world taught you to be selfless, but it forgot to tell you that selfless people often forget themselves completely. And that's not noble. That's dangerous. You cannot pour into others from an empty vessel. You cannot heal people while bleeding out in silence. You've got to check in with yourself. Ask yourself, what are you allowing that's draining your spirit? And what are you scared to lose that's costing you your sanity? Because peace isn't passive. It's a choice. A choice to walk away from loud chaos. A choice to unplug from disrespect. A choice to say, you don't get to treat me like this and still have access to me. That choice, that's your boundary. And yes, it might make people uncomfortable, but you weren't put on this earth to be everyone's comfort zone. You were put here to live fully, loudly, and truthfully. So protect your peace like it's sacred, because it is. And when they say you're selfish, remind them, it's not selfish to stop setting yourself on fire to keep others warm. And listen, sometimes you'll set the boundary and they'll test it anyway. They'll smile while they cross the line. They'll pretend they didn't hear you. They'll act like your no was optional. That's when you've got to show them with action, not just words. Because words don't mean much without consistency. If you say, I won't accept disrespect, and then let it slide when it shows up in disguise, you're training them to keep doing it. But if you follow through, if you walk away when the line is crossed, if you withhold your presence until your peace is honored, they'll learn. People remember what cost them access. And sometimes the only way to teach someone your value is to remove yourself from the equation. Don't argue. Don't beg. Don't try to explain the same thing 100 times. Some lessons don't come through lectures. They come through absence. Your absence is your proof that your boundary isn't just a suggestion. It's a standard. And you deserve to be surrounded by people who don't need to be warned twice to treat you right. I'm telling you. When you start respecting yourself, everything shifts. The room you walk into feels different. The energy you bring is grounded. People notice. They may not always say it, but they feel it. You don't even have to be loud about your boundaries. They'll feel them in your silence. They'll notice when your energy doesn't flinch at their drama. When your eyes don't light up just because they came back after ghosting you. That's strength. That's power. That's maturity. And you don't have to explain it. Growth doesn't require a press release. It just requires consistency. So stop over-explaining why you're not available like you used to be. Stop apologizing for taking care of yourself. You've done enough for others. Now it's time to do for you. The people who really love you will adjust. The ones who were just using you, they'll walk away. And that's okay. Because you're no longer living in fear of losing people. You're living in purpose, in peace, in clarity. That's what boundaries give you. A life that feels safe inside your own skin. You are allowed to evolve. You are allowed to say, I've had enough. You are allowed to unlearn the lie that says love means enduring mistreatment. Real love respects the lines you draw. It doesn't guilt you into silence. It doesn't twist your compassion into obligation. So step into your power. Not with anger, not with revenge, but with clarity, with authority, with the quiet understanding that your life matters. Your voice matters. And your limits are not up for debate. You don't have to harden your heart, just protect it. You don't have to become cold. Just stop being easily accessed by people who don't value your warmth. This is about self-preservation, about emotional maturity, about waking up one day and saying, I deserve better and I will not settle for less. And when you live that truth out loud, not only do you teach people how to treat you, you teach yourself how to never betray your own soul again. There comes a time in your life when you got to look in the mirror and ask yourself, do I really respect the person staring back at me? Not the image you show the world, not the smile you put on for social media, but the raw, unfiltered version of you. Because see, that's where everything begins. That's where the foundation is built. People don't just randomly disrespect you. They take cues from how you treat yourself. If you walk like you don't matter, if you talk like you don't deserve more, if you keep letting the world dim your light just so others can shine, you're sending a signal, a silent message that says, I'll accept whatever you give me, but you weren't made to settle. You weren't born to be invisible. You've got to wake up and own your worth before anyone else can recognize it. You teach the world how to treat you by the way you carry your spirit. And self-respect, that's not about arrogance. That's about knowing your value so deeply that you stop auditioning for roles in other people's lives where you don't belong. Because once you respect yourself, you stop begging others to. When you respect yourself, your standards change. Your circle gets smaller. Your conversations get deeper. Your boundaries get stronger. You stop chasing validation and start attracting real connection. You stop explaining your worth and start living it. And that shift, that's when things begin to transform, because people can feel it. They can feel when you are no longer tolerating the bare minimum. They can sense when you've outgrown the games, the breadcrumbs, the constant apologizing for simply existing. And it doesn't mean you become hard or bitter. It means you become clear. Clear about what you want. Clear about what you will and won't accept. Clear about what your soul needs to stay peaceful. But here's the truth. It starts with you. It starts with how you speak to yourself in silence. How you show up for yourself when nobody else claps for you. It's about doing the hard things even when no one's watching, especially when no one's watching. Because the world can't give you what you haven't first given yourself. You want respect, then treat yourself like someone worthy of it. Feed your mind. Protect your heart. Invest in your growth. That's the kind of energy that commands respect without ever raising your voice. You've got to stop waiting for other people to wake up and see your value. That's too heavy a burden to place on others, especially when most of them are blind to their own worth. If you don't walk into the room believing you belong, someone else will convince you that you don't. And if you keep looking for your reflection in broken mirrors, you'll always think you're less than. Self-respect means no longer needing approval to validate your existence. You don't need someone to choose you to prove you're enough. You were already chosen the day you took your first breath. So stop shrinking to fit in spaces that were never built for you. Stop lowering your voice just to make others comfortable. You were not put on this earth to play small. You've got greatness in you. But that greatness can only rise when your self-worth rises with it. So take your power back, not by force, but by remembering who you are. By standing tall when the world tries to make you doubt your place in it. You don't need to compete for respect. Just carry yourself like it's non-negotiable. The moment you start respecting yourself, you stop overextending. You stop saying yes when your heart is screaming no. You stop showing up for people who wouldn't even think to ask if you're okay. And that doesn't make you selfish, it makes you wise. Because constantly giving without receiving isn't generosity, it's emotional bankruptcy. You've got to protect your energy like it's sacred, because it is. If you keep pouring into people who only take, you'll wake up one day empty, bitter, and wondering where you lost yourself. But self-respect means listening when your soul says, I'm tired. It means walking away from conversations that no longer nourish you. It means removing yourself from tables where love is conditional and presence is taken for granted. And yes, it will be lonely sometimes, but lonely is better than being surrounded by people who make you feel alone. So give yourself the respect of rest, the respect of peace, the respect of boundaries. That's how you grow. That's how you become unshakable. Not because life gets easier, but because you become stronger in how you respond to it. There are people out there who will only respect you when you respect yourself enough to stop tolerating their disrespect. It's not your job to fix them, it's your job to honor you. And sometimes that means walking away without closure, without revenge, without drama, just a silent, sacred exit that says, I choose me now. Because self-respect means no longer settling for one-sided love, fake friendships, or temporary comfort that leaves permanent scars. You deserve more. But you can't receive more until you believe you're worthy of it. So stop negotiating your worth just to be liked. Stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. Your energy is precious. Your time is limited. Don't waste it trying to be enough for people who don't even know what enough looks like. The moment you decide you are enough, without additions or conditions, you begin attracting people who match your frequency. People who speak your soul's language. People who see you, not just use you. And it all starts with that one decision to stop begging for the bare minimum and start requiring the absolute best. You know what self-respect also looks like? Healing. Not for them, but for you. Because bitterness is a prison, and when you carry resentment, it eats you alive, one memory at a time. But when you respect yourself, you choose to let go, not because they deserve forgiveness, but because you deserve freedom. You refuse to let pain define your future. You refuse to let the past keep repeating through your habits. Healing is the highest form of self-respect, because it means you care enough about your future to stop rehearsing your old wounds. It means you wake up every day and say, I won't let what broke me keep controlling me. That's powerful. That's brave. That's love. Real love for yourself. And when that love grows, it radiates. People can feel it in how you carry yourself. In your eyes. In your voice. Yerusalem. You don't need revenge. You don't need to be loud. Your healing is your proof. Your peace is your revenge. Your glow is your answer. That's what happens when you respect yourself. You become untouchable in spirit, unshakable in purpose. Some of y'all are too loyal to people who are disloyal to your peace. And the reason is simple. You don't see how valuable you are without them. That's the lie self-respect destroys. When you start respecting yourself, you realize you don't need to keep people in your life out of fear of being alone. You realize your presence is the blessing, not the other way around. You realize that walking away isn't, when you stop trying to prove your worth to people who should have seen it from day one, because begging to be respected is beneath you. If someone can't honor your truth, they're not meant to stay in your story. Let them go. Release them with grace. And focus on building a life where your own voice is the loudest one cheering you on. Where your own reflection reminds you of your strength. That's what self-respect builds. A home inside your own soul, a foundation no one can shake, a love that doesn't crumble when someone else walks away. You are enough. Believe that, and everything changes. You have to stop looking for external confirmation of an internal truth. Respect doesn't start when someone finally acknowledges you. It starts when you acknowledge yourself. It starts when you stop betraying your gut just to keep someone comfortable. When you stop saying yes to things that deplete you. When you stop pretending to be less so others can feel like more. Self-respect is saying, I matter too, even when nobody else is saying it for you. It's choosing yourself in rooms that never chose you back. And that takes courage. That takes clarity. But most of all, it takes faith. Faith that you're enough as you are. That you're worthy of better. That you don't have to earn the right to be treated with dignity. Because once you truly respect yourself, you'll never again entertain what doesn't. You won't argue for your worth. You won't settle for convenience. You'll walk away, not out of anger, but out of love for yourself. And that walk, that's where the real power begins. Respect isn't something you demand with your voice. It's something you communicate with your presence. When you walk into a room with peace, confidence, and clarity, people feel it before you speak. When you carry yourself with intention, when you refuse to engage in gossip, drama, or dysfunction, people adjust. They know what you're about. You don't have to convince anyone. You don't have to prove anything. Just be solid, be consistent, be true to yourself, even when the world tries to mold you into something you're not. That's self-respect in action. It's how you stand tall in a storm. How you love yourself even when life disappoints you. It's not perfection, it's presence. It's not pride, it's purpose. So keep building that relationship with yourself. Feed your mind, protect your heart, sharpen your spirit. Hold on to your inner peace in your heart. Because the most powerful thing you can ever do in this life is respect yourself so deeply that the world learns to do the same without you ever saying a word. There comes a moment in your life when you have to stop explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. A moment when you realize your worth isn't up for debate. Not everyone will see you clearly, and that's okay. Some people have fog in their eyes and ego in their ears. No matter how much you give, no matter how kind you are, no matter how loud you speak your truth, they'll twist it to fit their comfort zone. So stop shrinking yourself just to be accepted. Stop watering yourself down just so people who can't handle your full presence can sip you comfortably. You don't owe anyone an explanation for why you are who you are. Your value doesn't need a PowerPoint presentation. You're not here to convince, you're here to live. And live boldly. You're not on trial, you're not auditioning. You're not standing before a panel waiting for applause. You are already enough. And if they can't see it, it's not your job to help them focus. Because the people who are meant for you will never need subtitles to understand your soul. When you constantly feel the need to explain your worth, it means you're surrounded by the wrong people. People who benefit from your doubt. People who feed off your insecurity. People who need you to believe you're not enough so they can feel like they are. But the moment you realize your worth is not something to defend, your life changes. Because self-worth is not a courtroom argument. It's a quiet knowing, a presence, a power. You walk into a room with your head held high, not because you're better than anyone, but because you're no longer playing small to make them feel big. You don't justify your standards. You don't over-explain your no. You don't apologize for prioritizing your peace. You just move with clarity. You move with conviction. And in that energy, everything that isn't aligned will fall away, and let it fall. Because what's real won't flinch. What's meant won't require you to twist your truth into something palatable. You don't have to fight to be understood when you already understand yourself. You ever notice how the more you explain yourself, the less they listen? Because they weren't trying to understand you, they were trying to control you, trying to pull you into their narrative, trying to make you doubt your own intuition. And that's why you have to stop arguing your value to people who profit from your silence. You're not hard to love. You're just no longer tolerating half love, conditional love, performance-based love. You're not difficult. You've just grown too deep for shallow waters. And the moment you stop defending your light to those who live in darkness is the moment you truly begin to shine, not out of spite, but out of alignment. Because explaining your worth is exhausting. It pulls you out of your power. It makes you seek permission to be what you already are. You don't need to campaign for respect. You just need to embody it. Let your walk speak. Let your boundaries speak. Let your peace speak. Because when you know your worth, you don't chase clarity. You are the clarity. And people will either meet you at that level or remove themselves. People will try to make you think you're too much, too loud, too bold, too intense, too passionate. Because your presence triggers what they've buried. But their discomfort is not your burden. Their confusion is not your assignment. Stop explaining why you dream big. Stop justifying why you require honesty. Stop defending why you won't settle for breadcrumbs. Because your worth isn't rooted in their capacity to receive you. It's rooted in your capacity to love yourself enough to not stay where you are dismissed. You don't owe your heart to those who treat it like a convenience. You don't owe your vision to those who lack sight. And you sure don't owe your energy to those who drain it without reciprocation. You have the right to walk away, the right to evolve, the The right to say this version of me is no longer compatible with this environment. And you don't have to explain that to anyone. Not out of arrogance, but out of self-honoring. Because the moment you stop negotiating your worth is the moment you start living in your purpose. There are people in this world who will only value you when they can benefit from you. But the second you say, I'm not explaining myself anymore, they get uncomfortable. Why? Because they lose control. They can no longer guilt trip you, gaslight you, or play on your insecurities. And when you stop explaining your worth, you reclaim your voice, you reclaim your time, you reclaim your soul. Proving, that's peace. That's freedom. You don't need to be understood by everyone. Not everyone has the depth to meet you where you are, and that's not your loss, it's theirs. Stop putting energy into proving yourself and start investing that energy into becoming the best version of yourself. Grow in silence, heal in private, and show up so strong that people feel your worth without you saying a single word. Because when you walk in truth, the right people recognize you and the wrong ones disqualify themselves. And both are blessings. You're not here to be liked, you're here to be real. And real don't need permission. Real don't need applause. Real just shows up and keeps moving. Stop explaining why you raised your standards, why you no longer tolerate disrespect, why you cut off people who kept cutting into your peace. That's not pettiness. That's progress. You've outgrown what no longer honors you, and that's something to be proud of. Your growth is not an apology, it's a declaration. And anyone who makes you feel bad for choosing yourself is not aligned with your destiny. You are not responsible for making others comfortable with your boundaries. If they feel offended because you stopped overextending, that's their ego talking, not your conscience. Stand firm. You don't owe access to those who abuse the privilege. You don't have to sit at tables where your presence is only tolerated, not celebrated. Go where you're seen. Go where your name feels safe in someone's mouth. Go where love feels like freedom, not a transaction. And in that space, you'll find peace. But it begins with this: no more explaining your worth to people who benefit from you forgetting it. Let them go. Let them wonder. Let your life be the answer. You were not born to convince people of your greatness. You were born to live it. And when you stop explaining your worth, you move differently. You walk with stillness. You speak with purpose. You give without losing yourself. And you love without lowering your value. Because begging for respect is beneath you. Chasing approval is beneath you. You don't need a consensus to validate your truth. You just need courage to stand in it. And that's where the transformation happens. When you stop explaining and start embodying. When you stop reacting and start discerning. When you stop pleasing and start leading. You weren't made to blend in. You weren't made to be understood by those who lack the capacity. You were made to rise, to shake atmospheres, to elevate rooms simply by being all of who you are. Don't let small minds question your purpose. Don't let shallow souls shrink your depth. You are not too much. You are exactly what the right people have been praying for. So move like it, live like it, and don't say a word. Let your life do the talking. There's a quiet power that comes when you know who you are and refuse to explain it. You stop entering rooms trying to be liked and start walking in like you belong, because you do. You stop compromising your values just to keep someone around. You stop bending over backward for folks who wouldn't even lean forward for you. And the world adjusts. Slowly but surely, the energy around you changes, because self-worth is magnetic. It repels what is fake and attracts what is real. It clears out the clutter and creates space for purpose. You no longer chase people. You no longer chase love. You no longer chase respect. You attract it by being true to yourself. And that truth, it don't need dressing up. It don't need performance. It don't need a sales pitch. It just needs you to trust it, live it, and honor it. Because when you stop explaining your worth, you finally start living like you believe in it. And that's when you become unstoppable. The need to explain your worth comes from a wound that says, I won't be enough unless they see me. But let me tell you something. They don't need to see you for you to be powerful. They don't need to understand your path for you to walk it. You don't need witnesses to validate your transformation. The most important person that needs to recognize your worth is you. And once you do, once you really do, you start moving with purpose, not permission. You start acting like someone who knows what they bring to the table, even if you have to build your own damn table. Your silence becomes louder than any explanation. Your boundaries become louder than any debate. Your presence becomes louder than any argument. Because truth doesn't need backup, it just needs belief. So hold your head high, speak less, move smarter, And let every step you take be a reminder to the world, my worth is not up for discussion. It's not up for discounts. It's not a negotiation. Sometimes the most powerful response is no response at all. Not because you're weak, not because you don't have the words, but because you've outgrown the need to prove anything to anyone. When someone disrespects you, they want a reaction. They want your energy. They want your peace. Don't give it to them. Let your silence be the reminder that you no longer argue with people who don't operate on your level. Silence is not surrender, it's strategy, it's self-respect, it's emotional intelligence. Because anyone can yell, anyone can clap back, but not everyone has the strength to rise above. Your silence is not void, it's full of meaning. It says, I see your behavior and I choose not to match it. It says, I value myself too much to wrestle with disrespect. And that right there is power. You don't have to react to everything. You don't have to explain your dignity to someone who's already chosen to disregard it. Let them talk. Let them twist your name. Let them gossip and speculate. Your silence will echo louder than their noise. Because what you tolerate teaches others how to treat you. And your silence is saying, this is beneath me. There is a kind of silence that commands respect. A silence that doesn't beg, doesn't chase, and doesn't justify. That's the kind of silence you develop when you've walked through enough pain to know not everything needs your voice. See, you don't need to defend yourself to small minds with loud mouths. You don't have to lower your frequency to be heard by people who are committed to misunderstanding you. Silence is you saying you no longer have access to the part of me that explains, fixes, or entertains your chaos. And it burns them. Because people expect the old version of you, the one who used to overextend, overtalk, and overgive. But now, you've grown. You've mastered the art of letting people feel the absence of your energy. Let them wonder why you're quiet. Let them feel the void where your attention used to be. Disrespect doesn't need revenge. It needs distance. It needs elevation. And when you stop talking, you start teaching. You teach them that your peace is priceless. You teach them that your boundaries are not suggestions. And you teach them that your silence is a language they can't manipulate. You don't have to clap back to clap for yourself. Every time someone throws shade, they're trying to pull you into their storm. But you're not obligated to step into chaos just to prove you're calm. Your silence is a shield. It protects your power. It holds your dignity. And when someone shows you disrespect, you don't need to light a fire. You just need to stop feeding theirs. You don't explain your standards to someone who refuses to respect them. You don't argue with someone who's already chosen dishonor. You walk away, and that walk, that silence, it screams self-respect. Because you teach people how to treat you by what you don't allow. And if they can't handle your silence, it's because they've gotten too used to your noise, too used to you showing up for battles that didn't deserve your presence. But not anymore. You're not explaining, not engaging, not proving. You're just being. You're letting your absence be louder than your presence ever was. And that right there is how you reclaim your power. With silence, with stillness, with there's a maturity in silence that words can't reach, a strength that doesn't need to shout. When you stay silent in the face of disrespect, you're not letting them win. You're rising above the game, because responding to disrespect validates it. It brings it into your world. It says you are important enough to disturb my peace, but they're not. You choosing silence is not passivity, it's clarity. You know who you are. You know what you bring. You know what you deserve. And when someone treats you with less, you don't stoop down to meet them. You step back and rise higher. That kind of silence, it makes people uncomfortable. It confronts them with themselves. It forces them to sit with the weight of what they've done without the distraction of your reaction. That's where the power is. Not in shouting, not in retaliation, but in detachment. In removing yourself so fully that they can feel the loss of your presence without you ever saying a word. That silence becomes your boundary, your armor, your authority. Let them underestimate you. Let them believe your silence is weakness, because what they don't realize is that your silence is a decision to preserve your energy, a decision to no longer educate the ungrateful, a decision to protect your mental space. You've spent too many years explaining yourself to people who never intended to understand you. Now you move different. Now you let your peace speak. Because real strength doesn't look like control, it looks like release. And when you stop responding to disrespect, you send a message that screams louder than any argument. I don't move where I'm not respected. That silence, it changes dynamics. It exposes the intentions of those around you. It makes people realize the weight of your energy once it's gone. And while they scramble to decode your stillness, you've already moved on, elevated, grown, healed. You're not stuck trying to fix what you didn't break. You're not stuck replaying wounds they left behind. You're in your lane, minding your peace and letting your quiet speak volumes. Silence teaches lessons words can't. When someone crosses your boundary and you go quiet, they feel it. They notice the shift. They feel the cold air where warmth used to be. You don't have to scream to be heard. You just have to stop showing up for people who keep taking you for granted. Your silence becomes the mirror they can't look away from. It forces them to see their own behavior reflected back at them. And that's what unsettles them. Because while they expected drama, you gave them distance. While they expected explanation, you gave them exit. While they expected retaliation, you gave them release. That kind of silence is discipline, and it's hard-earned. It comes from years of chaos you've finally outgrown, from battles you finally decided not to fight, from wounds you finally decided to let heal. You no longer need closure. You don't need validation. You don't need them to acknowledge what they did. You found peace in simply walking away. And that silence, that's your freedom. People won't always value your silence at first. They'll think it's pride or ego or stubbornness, but eventually they'll understand. It was wisdom. It was strength. It was protection. Because not everything deserves your reaction. Not everyone deserves your energy. And not every insult needs a reply. Sometimes the greatest show of self-control is letting the fire burn without throwing in another log. Let them talk. Let them poke. Let them try to provoke you. You stay still, stay grounded, stay centered. Your silence is not you giving up, it's you leveling up. You finally understood that your peace is not worth trading for someone else's chaos. That silence doesn't make you invisible, it makes you untouchable. Let them misread you. Let them call it cold. You know what it really is. Healing, growth, boundaries. And every time you choose silence over reaction, you teach yourself, I am no longer accessible to disrespect. You've given explanations, you've given chances, you've given grace, and still they chose to violate your respect. That's why silence isn't just a reaction, it's a revolution. It's saying, I'm done. Not with hate, not with bitterness, but with clarity. You no longer argue your worth. You no longer beg for basic decency. You just go silent, and that silence is your closure. You don't chase apologies, you don't wait for remorse. You accept what is and you remove yourself from what dishonors you. And in that quiet, something powerful happens. You find yourself again. You begin to hear your own voice without the noise of others. You realize how loud peace can be, how healing solitude can feel, how beautiful it is to walk away and not look back. That's the kind of silence they don't expect. The kind that doesn't come from weakness, but from power. From being done explaining your boundaries. From being done lowering your standards. From being done dancing for crumbs. You sit in that silence. Let your silence be the standard, the boundary, the message. Because people will only take from you what you allow. And when your words no longer reach them, your absence will. Let them feel what it's like to be cut off from your light. Let them sit in the silence they created. Let them replay their choices in the quiet you leave behind. You don't need to curse them. You don't need to shame them. You don't need to explain what they did. Your silence will teach the lesson. And whether they learn from it or not is not your responsibility. Your only responsibility is to guard your peace like it's the crown it is. And sometimes guarding that peace means saying nothing at all. Just moving different, just going silent. Not out of hate, but out of healing. Not out of pride, but out of protection. Because you've learned now, true strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's the voice that whispers, this is not worth my energy, and walks away. There comes a point in your life where you realize that not everyone deserves access to you. Not everyone gets a seat at your table, not because you're arrogant, but because you've learned through pain, through betrayal, through experience, that access is a privilege, not a right. And that's where standards come in. Standards aren't walls to keep people out. They're doors with locks, filters that separate what grows you from what drains you? What uplifts you from what breaks you down? When you start living with standards, you stop begging for love, you stop settling for half effort. You stop allowing people to treat you like an option. You stop explaining why your heart deserves consistency, because deep down you finally accepted the truth. If you don't set the standard, the world will hand you its scraps. People treat you based on what you tolerate, and your life begins to reflect the level of respect you command. So raise it, set it, keep it, because your standards, they're not about being perfect. They're about protecting your peace, your energy, and your future. And the moment you start protecting yourself with standards, everything about your life begins to change. Setting standards isn't about being difficult. It's about being deliberate. You've spent too many nights wrestling with people who couldn't see your value. Too many conversations explaining your heart to those who never truly listened. Too many compromises that left you empty. That version of you, gone. The new you is intentional, measured, focused. The new you knows that your peace is sacred, your time is expensive, and your love is not up for discount. When you raise your standards, you don't have to fight for respect. It naturally flows to you. Because when people see how you carry yourself, how you speak about yourself, how you don't tolerate inconsistency, they either rise to meet you or remove themselves. And either one is a blessing. You don't need a crowd around you, you need alignment. People who match your energy, not just mirror it. People who love you deeply, not just occasionally. And if that means being alone for a season, so be it. That silence will teach you more than their chaos ever did. Let your standards be loud. Let your boundaries be visible. Let your life reflect the dignity you've earned through every moment you chose yourself. Every time you lower your standards, you're teaching someone how to hurt you. You're saying this is okay when deep down you know it's not. And that contradiction eats away at you. That self-betrayal turns into resentment, not toward them, but toward yourself. That's why setting standards is more than just an external filter. It's an internal declaration. It's saying, I matter enough to protect myself. It's not about being cold, it's about being clear. It's not about pushing people away, it's about pulling yourself back to the center. Because how can you expect people to honor you if you keep dishonoring yourself to make room for their comfort? You don't need to tolerate half-hearted love. You don't need to chase someone to feel whole. You need to remember who you are. And sometimes that starts with a simple decision. I'm not doing this anymore. No more tolerating breadcrumb attention. No more second chances to people who only showed up when it was convenient. You don't owe your loyalty to someone who never earned your presence. You owe it to yourself. To the healed, growing, evolving version of you who's tired of pretending almost is enough. Standards are a mirror. They reflect how you feel about yourself. When your standards are low, it's not because people changed. It's because you forgot your worth. But when you reclaim that worth, you don't even have to speak. People feel the shift. You stop answering calls that drain you. You stop showing up for people who cancel on your soul. You stop explaining your needs like they're negotiable. You stop trying to shrink your light to fit in places built on darkness. You walk into rooms differently. You speak with authority. You act with clarity. And that energy, it attracts the right ones and repels the wrong ones. Let it, because people will test you. They'll push boundaries. They'll challenge your growth. Not because they're evil, but because they're used to the version of you that didn't know better, but now you do. And when they feel that shift, they'll either adjust or disappear. And both are answers. The right people won't be offended by your standards. They'll be inspired by them. The wrong ones, let them go. Let your standard be the reason some people walk out. You're not filtering people out of hate. You're filtering for your healing. You see, your standards are the compass of your life. They determine the direction of your relationships, your goals, your career, your environment. And when you don't have them, life throws you into places that don't reflect who you really are. That's why you feel out of place. That's why your spirit gets heavy. You weren't meant to live at the mercy of other people's approval. You were meant to live with purpose, with intention, with direction. And standards give you that. They help you say no to what doesn't align and yes to what fuels you. They keep you from settling into temporary comfort that leads to permanent regret. Because settling doesn't just affect your present, it delays your future. It keeps you tied to people and places that were never meant to grow with you. So be bold about your standards. Don't water them down for anyone. Don't apologize for being clear about what you need. The people who care about you will honor them. The ones who don't, you're better without them. Your life is not an open field, it's a sacred garden. And your standards are the gate. When you stop setting standards, life sets them for you. And life will always give you what you're willing to settle for. If you settle for bare minimum, you'll keep receiving it. If you accept disrespect, it becomes your normal. But when you decide, truly decide that you deserve more, you stop participating in cycles that hurt you. You stop replaying old patterns, you start creating new ones. You start surrounding yourself with people who speak life into you, who see your worth without you having to prove it, who show up without needing a reason. That's what standards invite in. Quality, not just quantity, not just attention, but presence, intention, substance. You're not here for casual love or surface level friendship. You're here for something real, something deep. And that starts with you, with what you accept, with what you require. You're not being too much. You're just finally refusing to be not enough. So let your standard rise and don't come down, even if it gets lonely, even if it gets quiet. That season will refine you. And the people who find you there, they'll be the ones worth keeping. Let's be honest. People will treat you the way you allow them to. You can love someone deeply, but if they disrespect you and you stay, you're teaching them that love requires pain. You can give someone your time, your loyalty, your energy, but if you don't set boundaries, you're teaching them that access to you is unlimited. That's why your standards must be louder than your feelings. Your boundaries must outlast your loneliness. Because love without standards becomes self-destruction. Kindness without boundaries becomes exploitation. And you've been there before. You've drained yourself to fill others. You've silenced your needs to maintain peace, but not anymore. You've learned the difference between selflessness and self-sacrifice. You've learned that protecting your heart isn't selfish, it's survival. So don't just say what you want. Require it. Don't just hope for respect. Demand it. Don't just wish for love. Expect it at the level you deserve. You are not hard to love. You are just no longer willing to be loved poorly. The people who are meant for you will never be intimidated by your standards. They'll be grateful for them. Your standards don't push people away. They protect you from those who are never really for you. You're not here to convince someone to rise to your level. You're here to live fully in your truth and let the right ones rise naturally. That's the power of standards. They filter out confusion. They remove uncertainty. They create clarity. When someone knows what you stand for, what you won't tolerate, what your values are, they either align or they exit. And that's exactly how it should be. You don't need 50 options. You need the right fit, the right job, the right love, the right tribe. The kind that respects your no as much as your yes. The kind that doesn't challenge your dignity but celebrates it. And that kind of connection, it starts with you. It starts with what you set, what you hold, and what you no longer entertain. That's not pride. That's purpose. You weren't created to live in confusion. You were made to walk boldly in the direction of your calling with standards high and heart guarded. Every time you raise your standards, you're choosing yourself again. You're choosing the future version of you that deserves peace, consistency, and clarity. And yes, it will cost you. You may lose people. You may outgrow relationships. You may find yourself alone for a season. But don't confuse the pain of separation with the pain of settling. One hurts temporarily. The other hurts endlessly. You've already survived seasons where you accepted less than you deserved, where you made excuses for people who should have been giving you answers, where you lowered your light just to be seen. That chapter is over. The person you're becoming can't be found in places where your standards are seen as threats. You are not too much. You're just too aware now, too grounded, too grown. And from this moment on, every time you say no to what's beneath you, you say yes to what's aligned with you. Green, let your standards do the talking. Let your silence speak when your values are crossed. And let your life reflect the truth you've always known. You were made for more. There comes a moment in your life when you stop living to be liked and start standing to be respected. That shift changes everything. Because being liked, that's easy. Say what people want to hear, smile when it's uncomfortable, agree when your gut says no. But that version of you, the one who bends to fit in, the one who stays silent to avoid conflict, the one who walks on eggshells just to keep the peace, that version is slowly dying inside. Respect doesn't come from people liking you. It comes from people seeing that you are grounded in who you are, that you won't fold under pressure, that you won't abandon your values just to win favor. People may not always like what you say, they may not agree with your decisions, but if you move with integrity, if you speak from truth, if you live aligned with principle, they will respect you. And the best part, you'll respect yourself. Because at the end of the day, you can lose popularity and still sleep peacefully, but lose your self-respect, that's a debt that keeps you up at night. So choose respect, even if it means standing alone. You don't need everyone clapping for you. You don't need their applause to validate your decisions. You need clarity, you need conviction. Because when you chase approval, you lose direction. And it's not because you're weak, it's because we're human. We're wired to want acceptance. But the danger is when we make being liked our compass. That's how you end up in rooms you don't belong in, conversations you shouldn't be having, relationships that steal your joy. When you start living for likes, you start dying inside quietly. But when you pivot and say, I'd rather be respected than liked, everything rises to the surface. People who genuinely value you will stay. People who just used you for convenience will leave. And that's a win. Because your life is not a popularity contest. It's a purpose-driven journey. You weren't created to play small, to fit someone else's comfort zone. You were made to stand tall in your identity, even if it means they misunderstand you, even if they mislabel you, because the people who really matter, they don't need you to play a role. They respect you because you're real. And being real will cost you something, but it buys back your soul. Respect is earned by consistency, not charisma, not charm, but how you carry yourself when no one's watching, how you show up when it's hard, how you stand your ground when it's unpopular. And sometimes the moment you decide to walk in truth, you become a threat to people who only knew the agreeable version of you, the one who kept quiet to keep the peace. But peace without truth is just a silent war. That version of you who kept shrinking to be liked by everyone, that version is gone. You've evolved, you've learned, and now you know that liking is fleeting but respect endures. You don't have to be the favorite. You don't have to be the most charming. You just have to be honest, consistent, and grounded in who you are. That's what earns respect. That's what commands it without you asking for it. Because real recognize real. And people may not say it out loud, but they feel it when you walk into a room. That energy of someone who doesn't need external approval to feel worthy. That's rare. And when you live like that, even your silence starts to speak louder than their praise. They may talk about you. They may misunderstand your silence. They may think your boundaries are cold. Let them. Respect doesn't require explanation. If someone walks away because you wouldn't bend to be liked, let them keep walking. That's not rejection, that's redirection. Because every time you abandon your truth for someone else's comfort, you chip away at your soul, and eventually you become a shell, liked by many but known by none. But when you stand firm in your values, when you say no and mean it, when you walk away from what doesn't align, even the people who disagree with you will have to admit there's something about you they can't ignore. And that's something, it's called integrity. You've got to be okay with being misunderstood in a world obsessed with surface level validation. You've got to get comfortable with being alone in the name of peace, not external peace, the internal kind, the kind that lets you sleep at night, the kind that whispers, you did the right thing, even when nobody claps. Because that kind of peace, that's worth more than all the likes in the world. You are not a product on display. You are not here to be consumed by people's opinions. Your worth is not based on who approves of you. It's based on who you decide to be when the pressure hits. So many people live their whole lives trying to fit in, only to realize they lost themselves in the process. Don't let that be you. You were made to fit. You were made to stand, and sometimes standing looks like saying less, showing more, and letting your character speak. Because while likes fade, respect echoes. You can post something and get 1,000 likes today, but say no to one thing that violates your values, and you earn silent respect that lasts a lifetime. Let them not like you. Let them talk. Let them walk away. But don't let them steal your identity. You can't control how others receive you, but you can control how you carry yourself. with dignity, with discipline, with truth. And in a world that trades authenticity for approval, be the one who chose respect over applause. If you live for the cheers, you'll die from the silence. Think about that. If your self-worth is dependent on whether or not people like you, you'll always be a puppet, pulled by opinions, controlled by compliments, broken by criticism. But when you step out of that and say, I know who I am, that's when everything shifts. That's when you stop trying to be the favorite and start being the foundation, the person who doesn't need to be loud to be heard, the one who doesn't beg to be seen, because your presence speaks, your energy speaks, your values speak, and that kind of presence, it demands respect, not attention. Don't let the desire to be liked talk you into saying yes when your spirit says no. Don't let the fear of being disliked trap you in relationships that rob your peace. You weren't made for that. You weren't made to be liked by everybody. You were made to walk with purpose. And purpose will cost you approval, but it'll give you something far better. Clarity, strength, and self-respect. There's freedom in not needing to be liked. There's power in walking into a room and not adjusting your light to make others comfortable. You're not arrogant for knowing your value. You're not mean for drawing lines. You're not difficult for refusing to lower your standards. That's self-respect, that's maturity, and if someone can't handle that, they were never meant to walk with you anyway. Too many people lose their voice trying to stay in rooms they've outgrown. You're done with that. From now on, you speak up, even if your voice shakes. You draw the line, even if it makes them uncomfortable. Because comfort never built strength. And being liked never built legacy. Respect builds legacy. And the people who respect you will always outlast the ones who simply liked you when it was easy. So stop trying to be soft just to be accepted. Be real, be rooted. Be resilient, because the ones who matter don't need you to fake it. They need you to show up as you. You will never reach your full potential trying to be liked by everyone. Growth demands separation. Greatness demands discomfort. And not everyone will cheer when you rise. Some people liked you better when you were unsure of yourself, when you second-guessed your decisions, when you needed their validation. But when you start to evolve, when you start to lead, when you start to say, I don't need approval to be at peace, that threatens them. And that's not your problem. That's their insecurity. Let them wrestle with it. You keep rising. You keep showing up. Because people may not like your strength, but they will respect it. They may not agree with your boundaries, but they will remember how you held them. And that memory will last longer than any applause ever could. You weren't born to blend in. You were born to stand up. Even if it's alone. Especially if it's alone. Because real leaders are rarely liked by the crowd, but they are always respected by the ones who count. They maintain a relationship with you. Respect is built in silence, in moments where you could react, but you choose discipline. In moments where you could bend, but you choose boundaries. In moments where you could people please, but you choose to be principled. That kind of strength, it's quiet, it's not always seen, but it's always felt. And over time, it speaks louder than anything you say. Don't fall for the trap of needing to explain yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. Your life is not a debate. Your truth is not up for discussion. You don't owe anyone access to the version of you they failed to respect. So be okay with not being liked. Be okay with not being invited. Be okay with being the one who stands while others follow. Is that road? That one right there. That's the one that leads to impact and respect and real peace. And if you walk it long enough, you'll find people who weren't looking for someone to like. They were looking for someone to follow, someone real, someone like you. Everything you've heard today circles back to one simple truth. Your worth is not determined by how many people like you. It's not up for debate, not open for compromise, and certainly not reliant on approval. The world may try to shape you, bend you, and box you in with expectations. But the greatest act of self-respect you can ever make is to stand tall in who you are, even when it means standing alone. You don't have to raise your voice to be heard. You don't have to chase affection to be valuable. Respect is rooted in how you carry yourself when no one's watching, how you hold your ground when it would be easier to fold, and how you protect your peace in a world that profits off your distraction. When you live for likes, you become a mirror of what others want to see. But when you live for truth, you become a light, steady, unmoved, unbothered. And not everyone will like that. Some will misunderstand you. Others will distance themselves. Let them. You weren't created to please everyone. You were created to walk in purpose. And that kind of walk can be lonely, but it's real. And real is rare. So stop explaining your worth. Stop shrinking for comfort. Stop softening your edges for people who never intended to understand you. Because the ones who truly see you, the ones who respect your silence, your strength, your standards, those are the ones who matter. You don't owe anyone your peace. You don't owe anyone your softness at the expense of your strength. And you surely don't owe anyone an apology for growing. Let your presence speak for you. Let your boundaries speak for you. Let your energy speak for you. Because you don't have to shout to be heard when your life already speaks volumes. Respect comes not from demanding it, but from living in a way that leaves no doubt. You earn it with how you show up, how you protect yourself, how you stay true to your values when everything around you tries to pull you away from them. So walk tall, walk quietly, walk boldly, not because you want people to follow, but because you refuse to be led by fear or approval. And when it gets hard, when the silence gets loud, when the room gets cold, remember, this is what strength feels like. This is what leadership looks like. This is what self-respect sounds like. You are not here to be liked by everyone. You're here to be respected by the right ones, starting with yourself. Thank you for taking the time to walk this journey of truth and empowerment. Stay grounded, stay authentic, and stay unshakably you. May you continue to walk in dignity, hold your peace, and live a life that commands respect without ever having to beg for it. God bless you, and thank you for listening.